Thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna introduce Cherie. Dr. Cherie Westbrook is a wetland ecohydrology professor at the University of Saskatchewan, Canada. She's also my PhD supervisor. I don't work with beaver, but I do work with peatlands, and that's how we know each other. And in that university, she leads the Beaver Ecohydrology Lab. Her team studies how beavers reshape landscapes and water flow paths, revealing their surprising power as natural climate engineers. And with that, Cherie, I'm going to start sharing screens for you, and let me know if you can see. Put it on present
Yes.
mode. I'm a little confused. Do you see where the presentation mode is? Slideshow. Here we go. Can you see the whole screen?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And now I'll leave you to speak now.
All right. Thank you so much to everyone for coming to today's beaver session. As you probably can tell, my Spanish vocabulary is about 200 words. So, gracias por asistir a la sesión sobre castores. I hope I said that right. I am joining today's call from my home within Treaty 6 territory, which is at the intersection of the Central Flyway and the Mississippi Flyway. So it's a pretty exciting place to live in springtime and in fall. I pay my respects to the Indigenous people who have stewarded these lands and waters for time immemorial. Next, please. I'd like to start by asking you to carefully look at this image. What do you see? A pond, a wetland, a waterfowl habitat? Today, we're going to focus on wetland landscapes and how they are shaped by beavers. To accomplish that, I thought we would first start by learning a little bit about beavers, as many people are not familiar with them. Then we will talk about how they engineer wetlands and riverine ecosystems. We'll finish by connecting to the ecosystem services offered by beaver engineered wetlands, specifically ecosystem services that relate to birds. Next, please. So let's start by meeting the beaver. Next, please. Beavers have been around a really long time, about 10 million years. Ancient beavers whose influences on the landscape are still present today, but not all beavers were like the ones we know now. Several species have gone extinct over time, and not all of the beavers of the past have had the ability to cut wood, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's a behavior we most associate with modern beavers, Castor canadensis and Castor fever, but the earlier Castodore, the giant beavers, also had some woodcutting ability. So the two species that occur today don't actually interbreed with one another because they have a different number of chromosomes. So as we'll see in a moment, they live in slightly different places. But for a fun fact, during the Ice Age, North America was home to Castoroides, a giant beaver species that you can see a picture kind of the size of it on the left-hand side. These prehistoric beavers were as big as black bears, up to 8 feet in length, so over 1.5 meters long. While they didn't build dams like modern beavers, their size and presence were powerful parts of the ancient wetland systems. Change, please. So the two current species of beaver in the world don't tend to overlap naturally, and they don't interbreed because they have different chromosomes. And what you see here in the background is a map of the general distribution in blue. It's the North American beaver. So you can see it's mostly in North America, but there are some beaver in Norway in particular and parts of Germany. And you'll see a small population in southern South America, which we'll talk about in a minute. The Eurasian beaver, Castor feber, is located mostly in Europe and into uh, parts of Russia and actually into Mongolia now. The beavers have expanded quite a bit across Europe, and so things look a little different now than they did in the past. But life hasn't really been very easy for the two modern species of beaver. The beaver fur trade started around the 1500s, and it was mostly known to occur in North America, although it did actually start in Europe. So after they trapped out all of their beaver, they moved on to North America around 1500. And there was a lot of cooperation and forced cooperation of European explorers with indigenous people in North America. And over that next 100 years, the fur trade became highly organized. The demand for beaver fur hats in Europe increased, and that was what was driving this fur trade. So beaver were highly prized for their fur in order to build these hats. But as time went on, beaver were more and more trapped out. And by around 1870, really the traditional fur trade came to an end. Silk hats replaced fur hats as the fashion of the day in Europe. And at the same time, beaver across North America were very scarce. So really, fashion drove this species almost to extinction. In the 1900s, kind of between 1900 to 1930, there was an introduction of conservation laws. There were introductions of beavers, which even included dropping beavers out of planes in places like Idaho in the United States with parachutes, kind of surprisingly. And over time, beavers have rebounded to about 10% or so of their pre-fur trade numbers. There's also this population of about just over 100,000 beavers in southern South America. Argentina introduced 20 beavers at the end of World War II into Tierra del Fuego. These invasive beaver had spread northward, and they are now both in Argentina and Chile. Next, please. So I thought I would maybe situate the research that I have been privileged to do on beavers within this map of North and South America. So my research has spanned a number of sites in their native territory in North America, with most of my research focused in the Rocky Mountains, both in Canada and the United States. And I've also had the pleasure of working in Tierra del Fuego on the Argentine side, where I did a project down there on the invasive beaver. Currently, my research is expanding northward as beavers are expanding northward into the Arctic. Um, there in the Arctic, climate change has greatly changed the food resources available to beaver, and the climate has become more hospitable. So beavers are moving northward. Next, please. So, on to some facts about beavers so you can get to know them. Beavers have some of the most remarkable teeth of the animal kingdom. Their front incisors are self-sharpening, meaning that as they gnaw, the softer inner enamel wears out faster than the outer hard layer, maintaining this chisel-like edge. So they have a knife edge that can really cut into wood well. What's even more fascinating is that their teeth are strengthened with iron, which is what gives them that distinctive orange color. This iron-rich enamel not only adds durability, but also helps resist wear and tear from constant chewing. And beavers do indeed chew constantly. Their teeth never stop growing. So unlike other rodents, beavers have to chew and wear their teeth daily unless And if they don't, they will wear too long and actually kill them. So that would be a problem. Okay. So the wood cutting behavior that they do, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, isn't just about constructing things. It's a vital part of their dental health. Next, please. A beaver's tail is one of its most versatile tools. Broad and flat, it serves multiple purposes depending on the moment of time. In water, the tail can act as a rudder, helping the beaver steer with precision as it swims. It also functions like a paddle, aiding propulsion when needed, so forward movement. On the land, a tail becomes a stabilizer, helping the beaver balance when sitting upright or gnawing on trees. And when danger is near, beaver will slap its tail against the water surface like this to create a loud warning signal, alerting others in its family unit. Next, please. Speaking of families, beavers are deeply family-oriented animals. They live in tight-knit groups called colonies, usually made up of two parents, full adults, their newborn kits, and yearlings from the previous season. So families consist of anywhere between about 6 and 25 individuals. These family units work together, as we will see a little bit later, and they protect one another from predators and also from other beaver colonies. It's a cooperative lifestyle that helps young beavers learn survival skills before they strike out and find a mate of their own. And beaver are kind of unique in that they mate for life. Although I did know a beaver who got a divorce in Colorado, swam downstream about 10 kilometers and found another mate. Next, please. As I just mentioned, beavers are territorial animals and they have a unique way of marking their space. They built these scent mounds that you can see in the picture. They're small piles of mud mixed with a substance called castoreum. That's like the substance is produced from the glands near their tail from their anus. So this musky scent acts as a natural signpost, letting other beavers know that the area is claimed. It's a fairly subtle but effective way for beavers to communicate their boundaries to others. Next, please. So beavers are herbivores, feeding exclusively on plant material. Their diet includes bark, twigs, leaves, and a wide variety of aquatic vegetation. They especially like soft-wooded trees like aspen or willow, cottonwood. All of these things are easier to chew and are rich in nutrients. In the warmer summer months, they tend to eat aquatic plants as well, like water lilies or duckweed or cattail. And in places where we have winters that are, receive a lot of snow or get really cold, beavers prepare for winter by stockpiling their stems underwater in an area called a cache. So, and you can see a picture of that on the right, bottom right. Thanks, Maria, for circling that. That allows the top of the water body to freeze and the beaver to access the food below. And they are very smart. They put the things that they don't find as tasty on the top, and it weights down the things that they find more tasty on the bottom. Next, please. All right, so now it's your turn to get involved for our first opportunity here. So we have three different beaver myths, and I'd like you to think if each of these are true or false. So the first one is beavers eat fish. The second is they use their tails to carry mud. And the third is they transform landscapes more than any other mammal except humans. Do you have your answers yet? All right, let's look at them. Next slide, please. All right, so beavers do not eat fish. This is a very Common myth. Their ponds tend to hold a lot of fish, and other species like to go fish in beaver ponds, including humans, but beavers are mostly vegetarians. Beavers also don't use their tail to carry mud. They use it for balance, for warning, but they don't carry mud with it. And yes, as we're going to learn here in a few minutes, beavers rival humans in their ability to transform landscapes. So hopefully you did well on the first quiz of today. Next slide, please. Okay, so what makes beavers special isn't just one of the traits that we've talked about. It's how all of their different adaptations work together. So let's see how beavers use all of their special skills to transform entire landscapes. Next, please. All right. So what we're going to do now is combine our knowledge that we've gained about all of the different beaver traits to look at how they engineer landscapes. And shown in this air photo from Google Earth is a peatland located in northern Saskatchewan. All of those little darker colored marks are beaver ponds in the peatland. So beavers don't just live in wetlands, they actually create them. Their building behavior transforms landscapes. It transforms terrestrial landscapes into aquatic landscapes. And beavers also transform landscapes that are already wetlands, like peatlands. And they transform them in ways that influence how the ecosystem functions and the services it provides, including to waterfowl flyways. So let's dive into how they do this. Next, please. So a concept you maybe have already learned about in the past is ecosystem engineering. So that is the process by which organisms directly modify their environment, often in ways that benefit other species as well. These changes can include altering physical structures of the environment, redistributing resources, or by creating entirely new habitats. And beavers are probably the most classic example of an ecosystem engineer, but maybe that's just my bias because I happen to work in beaver engineered systems. So they build dams, they dig soils, they cut vegetation. And through doing these three types of engineering activities, they transform streams into wetlands, creating rich, biodiverse ecosystems that support birds, fish, amphibians, and countless other species. Next, please. All right, are you ready for quiz number 2? This one, I want you, if you're able to, add your answer, to the chat so I can see what people are thinking about. So the question is, which beaver trait do you think most helps them engineer ecosystems? Is it their big teeth? Is it their teamwork? How about their strong tails? Or maybe it's their persistence. So go ahead and enter your answers in the chat if we can see that. Oh, I love the answers coming in. They're all the same. I'll give you one more second to add your answers. We have a lot of consistency here. Most people are answering D. There's a few C's in there. Interestingly, I didn't see anybody answer A. Okay. So it was maybe a bit of a trick question because we talked about needing all of these types of attributes in order to engineer ecosystems. But there may be two that stand out a little bit more than the others, okay? So A, their big teeth are actually fundamental to being able to change how water is flowing in landscapes. And that is because beavers use their big teeth that are constantly growing to cut down trees and shrubs and use that material then as building materials that affect the water flow. And the other answer, which most people got right, was D, their persistence. Beavers are all about working in teams, coordinating their efforts, and doing it day after generation to build structures. And so those two are probably the most important of the four on there. Teamwork and persistence go together. Okay, next, please. So beavers cut wood, not just for food or building. They're also reshaping the plant communities as they go. By felling trees and clearing vegetation, they open up light gaps in the forest canopy. These gaps allow sunlight to reach the ground, encouraging the growth of grass, shrubs, and young trees. This process resets the vegetation cycle and increases habitat diversity, benefiting a wide range of species from insects to birds. And I should really make a note here that this is true in places where beavers are native. In places where beavers are exotic animals in southern South America, this is not what happens. A system is not adapted to herbivory, and instead beavers are destroying the ecosystems there because the plants have no ability to regrow. And so there isn't this rejuvenation cycle occurring in Tierra del Fuego. Next, please. So beavers don't just build dams, they also dig. They're excellent diggers. They're really excellent diggers. They excavate soil, they create the canals that we see on the left-hand side away from their ponds. And what that does is allows them to extend the reach of their wetlands. Beavers are semi-aquatic rodents, meaning they are comfortable in water and they can be on land, but they're pretty clumsy. And so when they're on land, they are able to be prey much more easily for things like bear or cougar than they are when they're in their water. Okay. So there's a combination of why they dig. It's both for convenience to access food resources they might want on the hill slopes, but it's also about their safety. So they're basically building a waterway for themselves to access whatever resources that they're interested in. What this has the effect of doing is redistributing sediment in the systems, and enhancing wetland complexity and habitat diversity. Next, please. So beaver dam construction is one of nature's simplest yet most transformative behaviors. Using branches, mud, stones, and whatever else they can access, beavers build dams across flowing streams and also in wetlands like peatlands. All of their dams act to slow water flow through systems and they build ponds. And I think that's the thing we're most used to thinking about when we talk about beavers is their dams and the ponds. But there's just so much more to their landscapes they engineer. Okay. The act of building a dam has profound effects. It transforms fast-moving water into calm wetlands that store water for long periods of time, trap sediment, and retain nutrients. These wetlands become rich habitats for countless species, from amphibians to fish, to waterfowl, and to insects. And beaver dams don't just change the flow, they change the entire ecosystem. So next, please. When stream water backs up behind a dam, it can overtop its banks during the higher flows, flooding adjacent riparian wetland areas. Even in normal conditions, beaver ponds can help irrigate nearby soils by raising the local water table. Our research shows that both these effects boost plant productivity near dams, and also help drought-proof landscapes by increasing the amount of water in the groundwater system. In addition, beavers often inhabit wetland systems known as peatlands, which naturally accumulate carbon over time. Our research has found that peatlands with beavers have 10 times more open water and 12 times more open water features than peatlands without beavers. This increases this increase in open water area creates valuable habitat, especially for waterfowl, as we'll explore next. Sorry, that was next for you, Maria. All right, if you like zoom your mouse around there, we should be able to watch a video. The little video thing is on the left-hand side. Yeah. Oh, it's gonna play? Oh no. Oh, I have a great little video. I'm sorry.
Do you know how to do this, Cherie? I'm not quite sure. Oh, autoplay here. Let's see if it plays.
Yeah, that might just play the slides.
Let's see. Oh
It
yeah.
was such a,
Yeah, it does that.
yeah, okay.
We know what
Sorry, it's
that.
such a big file. Maybe right at the end I'll share my screen and play it. Okay.
Let me see if I can just um oh yeah, I don't know. It recognizes it as a slide only, so I
Okay.
don't think it's yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. At the end, I'll play it. I just have this cute little video of a pair of beaver constructing their dam, so you can see what that looks like if you're not familiar with it. All
Great.
right, let's maybe go to the next slide. Okay, so far we've seen how beavers physically reshape landscapes, cutting wood, digging canals, building dams. But their impacts don't stop there. These engineering feats create ripple effects throughout the ecosystems. So now I want to turn to exploring the ecosystem services that beaver provide, from water storage and carbon sequestration, right, that we see in this picture, to really the habitat creation and biodiversity support that they offer. Next. So starting with some of the habitat. The shallow edges and exposed mudflats created by beaver activity concentrate fish, amphibians, and insects, forming a rich prey base for species like heron. In particular, great blue heron um, rely on beaver ponds for two key things: foraging in the abundant shallow waters and nesting in the surrounding dead trees or on constructed platforms. Therefore, the beaver wetlands offer both food and shelter, making them vital stopovers and breeding grounds for herons and other water birds. And this is one of our sites. Actually, it's a site that Maria was working on in her PhD. She just wasn't working on the beaver ponds. And every year over the last 20 years that I have worked there, there has been a nesting pair of blue heron. Next, please. Beaver ponds also create a mosaic of shallow water habitats, the kind that many waterfowl prefer for feeding and raising their young. These wetlands offer calm, nutrient-rich waters and protective cover, making them ideal nurseries. So the field data that my colleague Glynis Hood at University of Alberta and I have been analyzing show that several duck species, including mallards, spend a high proportion of their time over the summer period on or near beaver dams, especially during brood rearing. The structure and stability of these ponds provides safe, resource-rich environments that support their successful nesting and chick survival. And in fact, we have hundreds and hundreds of pictures of little baby ducks going up and down the beaver dam faces. They have little slides and they play along the dam faces. Next, please. So beaver ponds aren't just breeding grounds or nurseries. They're vital stopovers and staging habitats for migrating water birds. These wetlands offer food-rich waters, safe nesting areas, safe resting areas, um, and even places to rear young. So if they need to do that during migration. So in the long-term wetland system I study in the eastern slopes of the Canadian Rocky Mountains, other researchers in the past have shown how important beaver ponds are in spring stopover sites for trumpeter swans, a species listed as at risk in Canada. These swans use the ponds to build up energy reserves needed for successful breeding, highlighting the critical role that beavers play in supporting migratory waterfowl along flyways. Next, please. So to close our workshop, I want to return to this image we started with. It's a beaver-created landscape. When you look at this scene now, what do you see? A pond, a wetland, waterfowl habitat, maybe a beaver-made ecosystem, maybe even something else. We began by exploring the traits of beavers, their teeth, their tails, their family life, and followed their journey as ecosystem engineers. We've seen how their behaviors shape landscapes, create habitat, and support biodiversity, especially for water birds along migratory flyways. So as you look at this image again, consider not just what's there, but how it got there and who made it possible. Next, please. All right, so if you want to contact me, there's my contact information. But Maria, maybe if I now share the video, if people are interested in watching it, it's like a minute long while we
Yes.
okay.
I want to watch
It's
it.
before people are thinking about their questions, I just have to find my video. Where did I put it? Oh, here it is. Okay. Let's see if I can make this work. Okay. Okay. Can you see the video page?
Yes, we can see the video page. It's not
Okay.
playing yet. Is that correct?
No, let's make it play. It should have sound. We'll see. Oh, no, come back here.
If
It's
it doesn't have sound, maybe you can reshare again. When you select share, you can select the two buttons on the right top right corner that say share audio. It says something so you can stop sharing because we're not gonna listen to it. Is the sound important?
no, no.
Okay, we're
Can you
good.
see it?
Yes, it's going.
Okay. So here we have two adult beavers that are cooperating together to try to fix the overall dam so that it stops that flow of water. And I have, this is from northern Saskatchewan, and the beavers over the course of 3 days plugged up all of this water flow by creating the dam, making it even higher. So I'll just play it one more time. All right, so hopefully, I use Google Translate, so hopefully some of my Spanish words at least made sense to you. Hopefully weren't correct, but hopefully they helped people follow along who are native Spanish speakers. I would be happy to take questions.
Thank you, Cherie. That was really, really beautiful. I think the pictures are amazing. Um, yeah, if people have questions, si tienen preguntas, les damos tiempo, pueden escribirlas o levantar la mano. Diana.
There's one in the chat, but could somebody translate it, please?
Yes, completely. We do have a question in the chat. Like I think that the question from our audience is more important. So his question is, what was your first initial contact or like outreach to with beavers? What was the first time you kind of came in touch with them?
Well, when I was a little girl, I grew up closer to central Canada near Toronto. And I lived just on the outskirts of the city, and there were many beavers in the landscape around me. And so when I was growing up as a girl, I would run across beaver dams without really thinking too much about them or the fact that not everybody got to enjoy these animals. And I think when I was looking around for PhDs, things came back together for me. And I saw, I knew I wanted to work on water for a very long time. I didn't know what exactly. And I had this opportunity to apply for a PhD on beavers, and I just felt it was my calling. So that was a wonderful experience.
Thank you. Um, we're gonna ask our next question from our audience. Jesús, si es que quisieras hacer tu pregunta, puedes hacerla en español y los traductores la traducirán.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias por la presentación. Soy de Chile, así que crecí viendo al castor como una especie exótica y fue muy entretenido ver su historia natural en lo que es su distribución natural. Y quería preguntar un poco sobre cómo es la relación o la percepción que tienen las comunidades o los agentes que viven cercanos al castor o con ellos, desde allá
Ok,
como la naturaleza.
gracias. Um, okay, sorry, I just realized you won't have that question translated to you, so I'll translate it to you. Jesus is from Chile, and he's always been very eager to actually see the beavers actually out in action and in what they do. And so he was wondering kind of what is the perception of the communities have around the beavers, of the communities that kind of do live with them within their proximity, and kind of what is that relationship that they have.
Mhm. So I will preface my answer by saying that the work I did in Argentina was in 2012. So perceptions might have changed, but there was a lot of people who really loved beavers, and there were a lot of people who did not remember life without beavers because so many of the places where beavers are, I mean, beavers are everywhere in Tierra del Fuego. And there aren't a lot of people who are older than the beavers are in that area. And so there was this kind of tension between some people really enjoying beavers and enjoying watching them and then, the understanding that they are fundamentally making changes to the landscape that were not good for the landscape there. And there are many introduced species in that part of the world. So there's a lot of work on the conservation aspects of trying to return back to the original landscape with less species. And so at the time that I was working there and shortly after, and I was working with the government, is that the goal was to try and eradicate beavers, which is a very difficult goal. There weren't very many to start with. And they went from about 20 beavers to well over 100,000 beavers. And these locations are very remote and hard to access and along a shared border between two countries who don't always get along. And so there are efforts to do eradication. I think there are mixed feelings amongst people as to the value of beavers. There are a lot of ranchers who I spoke with. I'm sorry, I can't remember the Spanish name for the ranchers, but they were destroying beaver dams because many of their cattle were getting caught in the soft mud in the beaver dams, and there were so many beaver dams that they were losing some of their livelihood to beavers. Yes, it's a complex problem. I can read that part of the Spanish.
No, thank you, because we actually had a few questions about it. We had another comment about what kind of work has been done in the Tierra del Fuego and how it's turned out. I think you've probably mentioned a little bit on that. And before we go to the other question on the chat, I'm going to pass the word to Cobb Staines. I believe if you ask your question in English, then the translators will be able to continue as normal.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Cherie. Thanks for your presentation. I'm curious in this room where there's a lot of people from lots of different countries, what you can talk about in terms of either needs or opportunities for transboundary beaver work.
What a great question. Nice to hear from you, Cobb. Thank you. I think it's very complex. Right now, there is almost a movement about beavers. I call it the beaver believer movement, where beavers can do no wrong and everybody wants them back. There's a lot of media attention on beavers, and I think we need a much more balanced perspective. The landscape has changed greatly in the absence of beavers, and beavers also are in places where they are not native. And so beavers are not good everywhere. I think where we need to um, do a lot more thinking is on how we create conservation policies, how we create beaver management policies that recognize the interactions of beavers and humans, and also recognize what the capacity of the landscape is for beavers, where it's beneficial perhaps to have beavers from an ecosystem perspective, from a human perspective, and where it might not be a good place to put beavers, where they won't thrive, and where there is potential for disease transmission by, quick introductions that aren't really being ethically done. I also think that there's a whole area of ethics that need to be explored that haven't yet been explored in relation to this idea of working with beavers to restore landscapes. That idea itself, working with another animal that isn't getting a choice in the situation, is something to consider as well. So I hope that answers or starts to answer your question, Cobb.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Cobb. Thank you, Cherie. We've got one question in the chat. It's from Natalia from Chile. She says that in Chile, there's a problem with beavers. They're considered an invasive species that alters ecosystem composition. So in your opinion, which are the factors which make it difficult to control beaver populations in the Southern Hemisphere?
Yes, I think anywhere it's difficult to control beaver populations. So thank you for that question. Beavers are rodents, and that means they can reproduce quickly and quite efficiently if given good resources in the environment. And so we certainly have to consider that. And even though they're territorial, they can occur at high densities. So you could have beaver colonies within a kilometer squared of one another. And that's pretty dense, right? The kind of work that I did when I was in Tierra del Fuego was really because I'm an eco-hydrologist. What I knew about beavers in Tierra del Fuego before going is that they were building dams in forested systems and flooding forests. And when I went there, I went, no, they're flooding peatlands. So they were flooding, and they are flooding fen peatlands. They seem to love those ecosystems. And when you flood those kinds of peatlands, you completely destroy them. And it's very hard to find a way to aid peatland restoration. And so it's just a net loss of an important ecosystem type, and the creation then of novel ecosystems, systems that didn't exist in the past, that are in this new state of equilibrium. So a complete state change if you're really familiar with ecosystem terminology. So that was kind of our major findings when we were there. And I think I went away from the question about, but how do we control them? That I don't know. That's a really good question. In part, yeah, I think there's an interest in trapping beavers, but when you are trapping beavers, as we do in North America, and in Eastern Europe, they are trapping beavers, it actually helps the beavers regenerate very well, because you're kind of relieving some of the pressure on the environmental resources. So unless you are trapping all of the beavers, you are not removing them from the landscape.
Thank you. Thank you, Cherie. Yes, it's very difficult with invasive species, especially as you say, with something like a rodent that can effectively that they become incredibly efficient, obviously, are making the most out of these resources and reproducing. And I think invasive species has always been kind of one of the most difficult things, but equally, as you say, for example, I'm now live in the UK and I actually live around a lot of wetlands. And they've been trying to reintroduce beavers out here to like the British Isles, and it's incredibly tricky because there is such a lack of ecosystem now that it has become a real issue to actually also be able to reintroduce these wild species to control what's effectively going to become massive floodplains. So yeah, it's a bit of a tricky question. I don't know if anybody else has a question for our guest.
There's a question on the chat if you want to read it.
Oh yes, there was this another question about the invasive species, and what do you think about beavers being an invasive species in Chile and Argentina, and they are affecting the ecosystem? I think you've probably covered that, but I don't know if you want to.
But in
Oh, I
the
think it was another one. Yeah.
yeah, on the chat.
Okay,
Well,
what kind of interesting beaver and waterfowl interaction with an emphasis on migratory ones have you seen particularly interested in your opinion?
yeah, I really I haven't studied this aspect, but um uh my brain has just disappeared for a minute. Like myself. The the trumpeter swans to me are so interesting. How as soon as you have more beaver ponds in a system, you start to see more and more of the species that was once actually listed as endangered. So it's listed as at risk now, where it was endangered about 40 years ago. And over that time in the region that they were doing the study, where I have been working, there has been a steady increase in the amount of beaver dams. We have been able to document the beaver dam increase on air photos. So I think I'm very curious about that. I don't really study migratory birds very much, but or not at all really. Then we're seeing interesting duck behaviors on beaver dams. But I've always just been kind of curious about that. And I have colleagues who study this kind of aspects. And I'm really curious to see what they come out with in the next few years, because the number of beavers in the system was reduced for a little while. There was a major flood that went through this part of the Rocky Mountains, and the beaver populations are just starting to recover from that flood. And I'm seeing a lot of beaver dam building. So I expect some changes to the waterfowl use. Thank you for that question.
Yes, thank you, Cherie. I don't know if we have any more questions. Okay. I don't know if any of our Marias have any questions. No? Okay. Then yeah. So I would actually kind of probably getting more into the beaver biology side of it. For example, how quickly can a beaver reproduce? How many babies can they have in a season? How is their cycle effectively working that way?
So they have one litter a year, and so they're not as fast as some other rodents. But the beaver colony that we have been studying intensively, they had 5 babies this last summer and all made it through the summer. So hopefully they will make it through the winter, even though they were being hunted all summer by a cougar. So the mom had to keep moving the babies around. So often you'll see 2, but if there are plenty of resources available, you will see more babies. So we were a little surprised to see 5, but that's pretty exciting. Accordingly, the beavers thought that they had 28 beaver ponds in the complex they were maintaining. I guess that wasn't enough because they've been working on a few more. So we're up into the 30s of the number of ponds they have in just this one complex.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. I don't know if anybody else may have any more questions.
Thank you
have
so
a
much.
question. Oh,
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. No,
I was just going to say thank you.
Yeah. But there's also another question from the audience, and I'm gonna prioritize that one. Okay, so the question is whether your research has been affected with the different political and environmental changes, and if so, how have you, I guess, confronted that?
Mhm. That's an excellent question, and maybe my answer will be perhaps a bit surprising at this point. But so when I first started studying beaver, it was long before they were sexy to study. And it was very hard to get research funding, but I just felt a deep sense of connection with beavers in wetlands and peatlands especially. And I wanted to understand more of what they do. I wanted to learn from this animal. And so I just kind of found little pockets of money to do that. And with the change in how popular beavers have become, actually funding has also become more available. And so 2 years ago, we got Glynis Hood, my colleague, and I got a fairly large grant to study beaver that we are still working on. We also get a lot of opportunities to talk to the media and have people interested in our work and actually have colleagues. So Canada's national animal is the beaver. It's a symbol of sovereignty of Canada. And yet there's only a small handful of researchers in Canada who study beavers. There are many more in the United States. So I don't know how beaver funding will go in the future, but I'm in it for the long haul. And we know we can do a lot with just a little bit of money, which is nothing unfamiliar to a nonprofit. So
Thank you very much, Cherie. We have one more question from someone on the chat, from Gabriel Matabenavites. And is there an interesting relationship between beavers and the kinds of soils, regolith and sediments that are in terms of what they use and how it affects their dam construction or burrows?
Yes, for sure. So when beavers are living in mineral soil systems, that's where there's sand, silt, or clay, they tend to build dams made primarily of sticks and pack them with dirt. And in a peatland where there's a lot of peat available, which is a very soft soil, but not as much woody material available. What they actually do in that system is they dig the peat and they pile it into berms. And then they add a few sticks, kind of like you would make a structure with concrete. You'd put some rebar into concrete to reinforce it. They put in the peatlands, they put the sticks and then some rocks, if they can find them, into these low dams that are mostly made of peat in order to make them structurally intact. And around the soils, it's quite interesting in droughts. I've been noticing that there are parts of Western Canada are in a massive drought at the moment. And there are only some places where beavers are holding water back and other places where they're not. And it seems to be places where they are tapping into the groundwater system with soils that allow for that exchange of water between the surface and groundwater. But I think we don't know very much about that yet. Those are just things I've been noticing, thinking about.
Amazing, thank you. I think that's all the questions that we can take in for now. I think thank you so much for being part of this event, Cherie. It's been amazing to hear and learn more about beavers. And we always know that they're amazing, obviously, for ecosystem restoration. But yeah, as you were mentioning, the wetlands are everywhere, and along many flyways, they actually do serve as super important habitats for all sorts of migratory animals, and especially, obviously, migratory birds. So yay for the beaver. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you
Gracias.
so much.